right, welcome. I'm Katie Hendricks,
And I'm Gay Hendricks.
and we're here to really support all of us in creating thriving relationships and relationships that can survive all of the different unknowns that we're all encountering right now with the virus and all of the changes to our schedules and our work schedules and school. It's a lot to deal with.
It's a lot to deal with, and it's also an opportunity because when things are shaky or falling apart in some ways, it's an opportune time to look at yourself and open up to whatever you need to do to survive and thrive through a stressful time. So it's an opportunity for learning that's unlike just about anything that we've ever run across. We work a lot, of course, with relationships, and so what we've seen is a tremendous amount of stresses in couple relationships, but also a lot of stress in the lives of people who are single because just for one example, single people have told me that meeting people is such a different challenge now. And so we have a lot of things we want to say about that we think will be helpful to you. But first of all, we just need to acknowledge that this is a very unusual, special time, and it calls forth an extraordinary type of love and attention from ourselves at this time.
So the first thing we want to invite you to do right now is to turn your attention toward you and appreciate yourself. That is, give some sensitive awareness, some presence to just what you're experiencing right now, what's going on inside you, what you're feeling, what you're dealing with, and appreciating yourself for your willingness to give attention to you. Because loving yourself for whatever you're experiencing rather than distracting yourself or turning away from that is really the beginning of being able to move toward what you want, being able to nourish yourself. So whether you're single or in a couple or have lots of friends around or isolated by yourself in a mountain cabin, this is a time where expanding your ability to give and receive love, I think, is really central. One of the things I've been appreciating about this time that some people are calling the Great Pause, and I sometimes call the Great Time Out, where, the planet is saying, okay, guys, time to take a time out and don't go back to normal. And we really want to encourage you not to go back to what you might have considered normal in your life, but use this as an opportunity to both dive more deeply, but also expand your willingness to give and receive more love. And so right now, just try on a commitment or a willingness. I'm willing to grow my ability, even now, to give and receive more love. And take a couple of breaths with that and notice, how does that feel to you to actually declare that I am willing to choose to open my ability to give and receive more love?
One of the things that our trainings, at some of our trainings when people graduate, they get a little wristband. And on the wristband, it has our name, of course, hendricks.com and all that, but it says, breathe, move, love. And what we're meaning by that is we really think that you have all the resources you need in your own natural body and mind resources to go through any kind of difficult situation there is. And what we specifically mean with the breathe part is that there's a tendency when times are stressful and fear is in the air, there's a tendency to clutch up and our breath goes up into our chest and muscles clench, and it's all part of the fight or flight response. Actually, the fight or flight response is a fight, flight, freeze, or faint response because fear actually has 4 different expressions. Some people get mad when they get scared, and some people pull back and flee when they get scared. Some people kind of get spacey when they get scared and want to watch an old Star Trek episode. And sometimes people just want to conk out and go to sleep.
But sometimes people freeze.
Freeze, too, yes. And so you can see that all throughout nature. For example, rabbits, if they get under stress, they freeze. And so we have the same mechanisms built into us. But here's where we have an advantage. Because of our consciousness and awareness that we've developed as human beings, we can use moments of stress to actually grow from. And as Katie just said, having a willingness to use this moment to grow from in your relationships and in your relationship with your body is incredibly important. So we want you, as you watch this and as you go through the times ahead, to really use your body, breathe, open up, learn from this moment. I was inspired one time many years ago when I read a biography of our great naturalist out here in California, John Muir, who was up in Yosemite camping in a cave when the great earthquake of 1906 hit. And in his notebook, he said he felt a great rumbling in the earth, and he ran outside to see what he could learn. And so we want to have that kind of attitude with the shaking that's going on now.
Yeah.
So that's the breath part. What we mean by move is to actually remember that human beings are born to move. We're not born to stay settled in ourselves. So keep your body moving while you're going through this. Get plenty of exercise. Remember to breathe. Remember to stretch. You are your most important instrument. And we need to realize that no matter what kind of work you do, whether you're in the coaching field or whatever you do, you're your own best instrument. And we all need, those of us that are in the helping professions, need to learn to keep polishing our instrument and tuning up our instrument all the time. So anything you can do like that involves breath and movement. Ultimately, the real healing power is in love, because with love you have the only thing that humans have access to that can contain its opposite. So here in this room and in other rooms we've worked in over the years, we've seen literally thousands of people make the shift from not loving themselves to suddenly loving themselves and realizing that they can even love the unlovable part of themselves. And so ultimately, everything that needs to get healed in ourselves and our relationship must be done in a loving way. You can't criticize change into a relationship, and you can't shame yourself into learning. And so what we need to learn really is how to love ourselves more deeply, which at the same time allows us to love the other person more deeply.
And love is really being able to be in the same space with something. And the big skill that we want to promote is turning toward what is happening. So turning toward what is happening inside you, turning toward what your partner or your friend or a relative is expressing to you, that you're letting your whole self, including your body, your breathing, opening your posture, turning toward what is actually happening. And the willingness to be with, I think, is our first expression of love. And the willingness to appreciate that we've been talking about is really giving your sensitive awareness to what you're turning toward. So if you notice, for example, that your friend seems to be, you're on a Zoom call and you notice that your friend looks kind of down, you can turn toward that. You can let yourself open to your own breathing, your own moving, but open to being sensitively aware of what they're experiencing. And those are really the building blocks of love. I also wanted to share with you that we have a huge number of free resources for you. We have two big websites, and Hendricks.com, HENDRICKS.com, has several videos on practicing these skills of loving and breathing and moving, listening and moving and listening to each other. And for the Foundation for Conscious Living.org has a bunch of videos, particularly on the subject of fear and how to move from fear to here. We've developed something we call Fear Melters, which uses very simple movements to allow you to get more present so that you can be here, so that you can turn toward and be with what is happening. And the whole idea of loving, I think, is also supported, and breathing, moving, and loving are supported by you taking a look at one of the pulsations that we've really noticed in relationship that's really, really important. And that is that we each have what we call an urge to merge, an urge toward unity, and an urge to individuate, an urge to fulfill our own creative destiny. And how that shows up during quarantine is you're together with people that that you haven't spent all day with,
Or you're alone.
or you're alone, and you don't have the opportunity to be with people. So the both ends of that continuum are really being emphasized right now, and we think that it's really important that you create a willingness to see or to feel, sense into, do I need some time for myself right now? Is it time for me to take a walk around the block, or take a book and, go out and go into another part of the house and just have some time for me? Or am I really wanting connection right now? And how will I know that? Because generally people wait until they get into some kind of a hassle with each other to create space, or they won't share what they really need with their partner and expect the other to mind read. So that's one of the things that I've really noticed has been important is, okay, am I getting enough solo time, and am I getting enough connection? And that's a dynamic balance that really changes, I think, both day to day, but over time, depending on what you're dealing with.
A friend of ours who's a yoga teacher that has 3 children, she was saying that if she gives herself an hour a day to herself to do her yoga and all of that, then she can give back 23 to the family. But if she doesn't get that hour, she can't give back anything. And so it's something we all really need to keep in mind, especially in times where there's often a forced intimacy of having kids stay at home and being in the same space as each other. I want to say another word too about the fear issue, because fear is really underneath most issues that occur in ourselves and between other people. There's something we get scared about dealing with in ourselves, and so we avoid it with addictions or whatever, or there's something we're not dealing with in the relationship, so we pull back and go into some kind of fear-based thing. But the reason fear is such an important thing to focus on is because throughout human evolution, there's been a tendency, not just with humans, but all other species too, to contract when we get scared. If you notice that if you get scared, you tighten up in your belly, you don't breathe as much, your muscles tighten up. And there have been jillions of different studies on that. But the important thing to know is that we've got wired into us a tendency to contract when we get scared. However, sometimes what we really need to be doing is expanding when we get scared and coming out of our crouch and opening up to learning, just like John Muir did, the great rumbling on the earth, and I ran out to see what I could learn. Many of us would be running for the back of the cave and say,
whoa!
Wait. And so what we need to do is get a habit built in of opening to things, opening to our fear, opening to our feelings, opening to our anger, instead of shying away from that, because it's in the act of defending ourselves against things in here that causes a lot of our symptoms. And same thing, if we're defending against something that's going on here, then we get into the usual relationship dramas of criticism, control, contempt, sulking.
Defensive.
All of the popular kinds of things that human beings tend to do when we get scared in a relationship. So anyway, I'm just wanting to point a big finger at fear in ourselves, because there's a lot to be learned there. And especially once you really become open to learning about those inner feelings, you realize how much control and power you have over them with your breathing, because breathing is really a key to all of your emotions. If you notice in yourself, fear will cause you to breathe differently than anger will. Same thing with sadness. Oftentimes when you're sad, you breathe slower and more labored, whereas when you're angry, your breath goes up in your chest and you get more huffy and puffy with it. But really fear is at the center of it. And if you learn how to be open to and learn from your fear, you can really save yourself a lot of wear and tear on your body, because you're not fighting with what's going on inside.
And what I was just hearing and what you were saying is that you're being authentic, you're being real. And I think that we're really being called on right now to draw on our deepest core resilience, our possibilities to meet this time. And even just saying something as simple as, oh, I just realized that I'm scared. And when I say that, I'm actually aligning with what is happening, and that unkinks the energy hose inside so that I feel more aliveness. I feel more capability. And if I'm doing that in relationship with anybody in my life, I become a space where other people can be real. I then invite other people to share and to connect. And one of the big issues for so many people right now is connecting. How can I connect with others? And so being able to both give my attention and to give my full attention is what we call really turning toward. So I'm not turning toward, but then I'm also sort of looking at, or doing something else, or going, yeah. If I really turn toward and I'm also willing to be real, that opens up this ability to connect that allows us to fill our reservoirs, our inner reservoirs, and to be able to be more abundant with what we can offer, and also what we can create, solutions that we can create for all of the daily things that come up. Things break, schedules change, kids can go back to school. No, they can't go back to school. So all of this unexpected, I think, really is what scientists would call a pattern interrupt. It's kind of a global pattern interrupt. So the usual things that we do every day, those have all been disrupted. And when we can meet them by being real and by actually calling up our ability to co-create together, we can invent all kinds of new things. One other thing I was wanting to mention too that I find really important during this time is focus on, in your relationship with friends, yourself, and others, get your business handled in what we call a 10-minute business conversation. The stuff talk conversation. So one of the dangers is that the things that need to be happen, the decisions that need to be made, can spread out and kind of contaminate the connection and the possibility of playing with each other, of enjoying beauty, of doing things together that you both enjoy or that the family enjoys. So we have, in fact, in our book, Conscious Loving Ever After, we have practices in there that we think would be very valuable for you, especially at this time, on customizing appreciation. But the ones that I'm talking about now are what we call the 10-minute conversations, and they allow you to handle the business of life without having it spread out into all of the times that you're together. And so you can find directions in that, but the gist of it is that you schedule a meeting and you take 10 minutes to look at what needs to happen, who's going to do it, and by when are they going to do it.
What household thing is broken?
Yeah,
all
of those things.
You put all of that into the stuff talk.
Yeah.
And we started doing those on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We had the stuff talk on Tuesday and the heart talk on Thursday. So you want to kind of separate that out so you're not talking about stuff all the time.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people have said to us in counseling over the years that it just, like one particular time a fellow told me that he came home from a business, long 3-day business trip, and he opened the door and the first thing he got was, the upstairs toilet is busted. So you want a certain quality of experience, and then suddenly something breaks.
Yeah.
And so most of the time, though, those things aren't urgent. You don't need to handle them at the time. So that's why we suggest pushing them into a compressed little period of time. And most people can handle the stuff in 10 minutes. It doesn't take an hour to do it. But then on Thursday, we don't talk about stuff. We have our 10-minute heart talk where we talk about anything that's going on with us. And it can go 20 minutes or 30 minutes, but most of the times it's just kind of talking about some stuff that's up that we haven't had a really chance to communicate about. So whether you do it on Monday and Wednesday or whatever, we suggest you do is you make a couple of times a week, especially one that is designated for stuff, business stuff, because that can get out of hand and just crawl all over your life. So we say, put it in a box and deal with it on Tuesday night.
Right, and get it handled. And then one of the disciplines for me was writing it down. So rather than saying, oh, okay, I would write it down. And then when I had a sufficient number of things on the list, I'd say, I'd like to schedule a business, a stuff talk conversation with you. And we would just handle it then. And what that opens up is that anytime your partner or your friend says, hey, I'm noticing, or hey, it's what's going on? What are you learning? What have you just discovered? What, like Gail will say, hey, I want to show you this cartoon that I just saw. Or I was just thinking about something I experienced last week and I just figured out what that was about. So it's about the richness of giving and receiving love, of giving and receiving attention. And I find that so incredibly nourishing, and we need a lot more of it right now because there's so much that is chaotic and unknown. So having something that you've agreed on, that is something that you can count on. I know that I'll have this time to talk to you about this. I think really it kind of sounds a tone, it gives a kind of a drum beat that your body can go, oh, okay, something has some kind of regularity in it. And the other thing I wanted to share is how important I think it is for us to focus on things that we love rather than everything that is hard. So one of the things that I do every day is to focus on something that I love to do. So one of the things I love to do is to cook. And so every day I tune into what would be fun for us to eat today. Or I'll ask, hey, when you're thinking about it, what would you most like to eat today? And then giving my attention to creating that is not only nourishing, but it's a loving practice for me that helps me to open up to doing something that is creative. So feeding your creativity during this time with beauty, things that you love to do that may not necessarily seem productive, but they're really essential to your inner emotional reservoir. And I think it's really important to give yourself at least 10 minutes a day where you're doing something that is just for you and it's something that you love to do, whether it's doodling or cooking or singing or making something new with scraps that you're finding around the house. So that was another one of the recommendations that we wanted to make to you.
Also, too, one of the most important things I think that we ever learn about ourselves, and especially in relationships, is how to use our creativity productively. One of the big things that we looked at in Conscious Loving Ever After, it's a book about primarily about how to create magic at midlife and beyond in relationships. So it's based on work we've done with couples ranging in ages from 38, 40 years of age up to 75, 80 years of age. And creativity becomes really important in the second half of life because the way we say it is every breath you take after 40 or so is a breath of creativity or a breath of stagnation. So every choice you make, especially at midlife and beyond, is about, am I opening up to something new? Am I generating something new? Am I learning something new? Or am I just going through the motions and riding on what has happened before? One of the things I've learned about human beings is the personality that gets us up to about age 40, we need to then grow a different personality that's the one that's going to go from 40 to 90, because a lot of times the push of life in your 20s and 30s, if you keep doing that in your 40s and 50s, really begins to eat up your body. And so at 40 or so, you need to learn how to open up and move through life in a more loving, mindful way. Otherwise, you eat up your instrument.
Yeah, so we have suggestions for you, both in Conscious Loving Ever After, but we will also have creative instructions and suggestions for you in Conscious Loving Ever After, and on the foundation website, foundationforconsciousloving.org. So one other thing that I want to mention that I think is a nutrient for everybody is appreciation. And it is probably the easiest, the most underutilized skill that humans have access to. And appreciating is not only just focusing on giving your sensitive awareness to being with someone, it's also focusing on what's emerging, what is a gift in this person, using my senses to tune into what about this person can I really appreciate. So I do my best every day to be finding new things to appreciate about you, and I experience that from you as well. So whether it's touch or really using all of your different senses to appreciate your partner, because we know that successful, thriving relationships have at least a 5-to-1 ratio of appreciations to criticisms or withdrawal. So your ability to grow your appreciation happens one appreciation at a time. And so if you were going to do just one thing, that's what I would really suggest. And in Conscious Loving Ever After, we have a little exercise for you. We call it customizing appreciation, because not everybody likes to be appreciated in the same way. So we have a guideline for you so you can deepen your appreciation for yourself and for others in a way that I guarantee you makes a huge difference, because people light up when they're seen. When you can presence them and notice something. I can see people expanding and kind of fluffing themselves, and you can tell that that is just as important as food and water, giving that kind of appreciation.
And also, don't forget to appreciate yourself,
Exactly.
too, because ultimately, the more loving you are to yourself in every possible way, the more you're going to be able to love other people in the way that they thrive on, too.